Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, everyone. Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. Let's do this, man. I am your host, Jimmy Church. And what an amazing week on Fade to Black. Last night, Jason Quitt was with us for Quitspiracy number 13. We actually got that number right this time around. Tonight, Robert Grant is with us. And tonight's show, now, I'll get around to all of that in just a minute. But what I enjoy about Robert is surprises and learning something. And we're going to do all of that and much more tonight. And it's going to focus around, it's always, the mysteries of the ancients for sure. It's always going to involve math. Tonight, we're going to work music into Robert's equations, and we're going to do all of that tonight. And tomorrow night, Andy Marcial is with us, 15 years of UFO research, UFOs, USOs, and UAPs, and we'll be doing all of that tomorrow night, including his research into the Homeland Security videos that came out of Puerto Rico. That is tomorrow night. And then Thursday night, another big show. All of them are big this week. They are every week. Thursday night, Eben Alexander is with us, neurosurgeon and NDE. We're going to talk about his NDE and, of course, his best-selling book, Proof of Heaven. And that's Thursday night with Eben Alexander. So there you go. I just want to get straight to it tonight. We've got Robert Grant with us. We're going to be talking about numbers, math. We're going to be connecting history, and we're going to wrap all of this into a conversation about music and ancient Egypt. So just listen. I told everybody earlier today on the news, we're going to have a pop quiz. All right. So pay attention. All right. He's a polymath, a prolific inventor, thought leader in the fields ranging from medical technology and cryptography to sacred geometry, mathematics, and music theory. He's got over 80 patents, close to 100 patents, I understand, in his name. And he is known for bridging that gap between science, spirituality, innovation, and applying all of that understanding of sacred geometry and universal mathematical principles to solve problems across diverse industries. With all of that, his website, Robert Edward Grant, is below on our website and throughout social media. And I would like to welcome back to the show the one and only Robert Grant. He's right there. Robert, how you
Jimmy,
doing, my man?
What a pleasure to be here with you again.
Yeah, it's so good. So good to see. It seems like we were just eating and breaking bread not so long ago, but
that's true. We were. We definitely were.
Can I? Okay, I'm going to start off with this. With you, you remind me of, and this happened during one of our dinners that we just recently had. And you and I were sitting. We had an opportunity to be a little private, right? And you were sharing stuff with me, and this is what I was thinking as I'm going through the stuff that you were showing me. I'm thinking he's Robert Langdon from the Da Vinci Code, right? and that's what. And I say that because that character is constantly looking at something and tying it to something else. And that's a problem that you have, isn't it?
It's a good problem, I think.
Right.
At least that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Right. Because when I'm gonna ask you this question first. I'm of the opinion that the most magical invention in the universe is the human brain. And now we've got what, an example of one, right, to compare it to at this moment, but it's an incredibly beautiful machine that operates in its own way, and you take advantage of that, right? Now, would you agree with something like that, a statement like that, that what is the most beautiful invention in the universe? What do you think? Is it the human brain?
Well, I would have to say it's got to be, if not the best invention, it's probably right up there. But I might say that the heart actually could trump it, because the heart is what the brain by itself. One of my favorite quotes is when the heart thinks and the mind feels, that's when the river of wisdom flows. So it's not just the brain, it's really the heart in combination with the brain. And there is a point in time when you balance these masculine and feminine energies, and that really is about learning to perfect the antenna. Maybe the brain is not at all what we believe it to be, which most believe it to be some sort of hard drive storage unit for data and information, a place that we go to memorize things, But actually, maybe the brain is more like a radio. And it's a receiver that we can tune the dial of which hertz frequencies we're going to listen to based on our emotional states. And that's the heart that is the tuning dial. So I fundamentally believe that it's the combination of the two that really make us evolved beings. And it's not just the opposable thumb. It's our ability to compromise and choose to love instead of being right.
Is that chemistry, or is that something else that is involved? Because it's too big of a number to be chance, right? If it's chance and just luck, then we're talking about a number that would stretch from here to Mars in 12-point type, right? I mean, that's a huge number. But some would say in the hard sciences that it's just chemistry doing its thing. It's just particles doing its thing. But to have everything just start as one cell, divide into two, and then the decision of who is going to be the heart, who is going to be the brain, who is going to be the nervous system, and then it all works in harmony throughout nature, right? That can't be chemistry and chance, can it?
I don't believe so. So I know that there are a lot of people that believe that we live in a purely material universe that is entirely objective, and that there's one objective truth. And everything I've learned in my life and in science is that we are more in a kaleidoscope of facets rather than facts, of a larger truth that we're only able to perceive small aspects of, because we can't separate our observation from the fact that we have biases. And bias is one of the most difficult things to remove from science altogether. That's why we have clinical trials. And even still, you'll see that one of the big challenges related to clinical trials is that what determines the outcome of too often clinical trials is who's paying for it. There's already inherent biases built into it. And this is something that we cannot ignore. As scientists, we have to recognize that. But I don't even see myself as purely a scientist. I see myself as, a polymath, someone who is straddling the line between science and art. Today I was just with, have you ever seen in the hotels and large hotels, like the Pendry, many hotels, you'll find like these big geometric art pieces that are beautiful, right? That have like these mirrors inside of them and then all lights inside of them. It's gorgeous. They're these gorgeous works of art. Well, they're quite expensive. And I have a friend who's been, following me for many years on Instagram and on social media, named Anthony James. And he invited me to go to his studio today. And he makes all of these geometric pieces of art around the world that go to all these wonderful, beautiful buildings that are, complementing the artistry of the architecture of the buildings, along with the artistry that is in these geometric shapes and forms. And we're working on a project together. So we're working on a project together that's going to be related to a commission with one of the major, you would know it very well, but one of the major museums in the world. And we're going to do an artistic piece that is the perfect synthesis of art, spirituality, and science. And the best synthesis I could think of for that is DNA. So imagine a beautiful artistic rendition of DNA in a 24-strand configuration, fully activated, that will be probably, 25 feet high and gigantic, and really represent this symbiosis. Because if you think about mathematics, applied mathematics is geometry, applied geometry is physics, applied physics is chemistry, applied chemistry is biology, applied biology is psychology, applied psychology is sociology, applied sociology is philosophy, and applied philosophy is back to mathematics. We perceive everything as being entirely separate because that's the way we're taught these things. But that's just because we don't understand the underlying language that connects it all. And that then says to me the same reason why we can't understand necessarily how 0 to the power of 0 could possibly equal 1 very often. Right? So 0 to the power of 0 is actually, the answer of that is actually the number 1. And most people don't understand, how is it that nothing to the power of nothing could essentially become everything, because the universe is just the one that divides itself infinitely.
Well,
just like cells.
So 0 to the power of 0 is, that's a group, right? So it would be one group. So it would have to be 1, right? I'm not a math wizard, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So let me show you though how this actually works, because this is a fundamental aspect to understand how this actually comes together. So I want to.
And if somebody, while you're pulling that up, let me ask you this. When somebody sees something and without understanding any math or architecture or anything else going into it, engineering, and it could be a painting, it could be a structure, it could be a room, it could be a chair, right? But if it's perfect, and you don't have to understand the math, but you see it as being correct, right? The aesthetic value overwhelms you, like the Parthenon, or you know what I mean? And you don't have to know that Fibonacci or the golden number or any of that is involved, but to the eye and to the brain, it's just pleasing and correct, right?
That's right.
That's right. Like this DNA sequence that you're talking about.
Exactly. Right? Precisely right. So I'm going to just show you this real quick because, I make sculptures as well. I never measure the sculpture that I'm making to see if it's perfectly, abiding by the golden ratio. Mm-hmm. And yet at the end of it, when I measure it with my golden ratio calipers, it always ends up being golden ratio. Perfect. So what is it that makes it perfect golden ratio? Is it just my understanding of aesthetic appeal?
Right.
Or is there something more fundamental that relates to consciousness? And I would side probably more with the latter than the former. And I can explain why.
Well, it would have to, and what a great example. We're going to be talking about the Great Pyramid tonight for a while. And so when you walk into the king's chamber and you look at it, especially for the first time, and if you don't know anything about math or anything about geometry or sacred anything or Fibonacci, if you don't know anything about any of that, but you walk in and that room feels correct, right? It just does.
Yes, it
feels
does.
Correct.
Yes, it does.
And so, and then you apply some of the facts that are involved here, and that is, first off, it's ancient. It's as old as the hills. So it's like the chicken or the egg. What came first here? did the builders of something like that understand golden ratios and golden numbers and Fibonacci and the correctness of things? And did they understand that? Or did they build the room first, like you, right? Build the room first to be aesthetically correct, and then the numbers fit later? What do you think, chicken or the egg?
I think it's both. I think it's actually both. Because, and you'll see this in the analysis related to the Giza Plateau and the discovery that we've made. The ratios are too perfect and too exacting that it leaves no chance, in my mind, as to whether or not they understood it and that there was intention behind it. And there's a pattern that's around it as well. So you can really test the intentionality when you can see the extension of a pattern that extends well beyond the Giza Plateau to include all pyramids around the world. That these pyramids are built on the same harmonic principles, and they're actually making musical scales. So it's as if what we're talking about with the Giza Plateau and on the pyramids in Teotihuacan and in China as well, and virtually all over the world, in pyramids we've not even discovered yet in places like Brazil, and others that claim to be, possible pyramids, like in Bosnia, they all are conforming somehow, some way, to the same integer grid of simple integer ratio relationships that are Pythagorean intervals in music that are perfect. And that's what determines exactly the slope angles of each pyramid, which every pyramid is entirely different. So you could say, with every pyramid being entirely different slope angles, then you have to ask about the intentionality and how perfect are those differences. And when they're all entirely perfect to create all the musical intervals, then you kind of say, okay, now I see a pattern that in a macro sense is jiving with the micro sense. And we can now say there had to be intentionality behind it. There's just no way otherwise. So maybe what the pyramids actually are is a giant piano, and each pyramid is a different piano string.
Is okay. And we've got something I'm going to pull up on the screen here in a second. And before we do that, then there's a basic question that has to be asked here. Everything, in my opinion, everything is taught, right? It's very rare that you have a brand new just invention out of the air, right? Something preceded it, an idea, everything is taught. And if we apply this idea to the pyramids, that would suggest to me that they were taught these principles of music and scales and so forth, and that came from somewhere else. Do you agree with that? What and if you do, can you expand on it?
Yes, I mean, I think that this understanding of music and scales is actually just a part of a higher level of conscious progression and evolution.
Sure.
So it's almost like you could talk about, level 1, level 2, level 3 civilizations, right? Now, we tend to think of, the way that we communicate, not necessarily mathematically, but that might be a determinant of how much intelligence we have. Or let's say we have the ability to get beyond Overunity in creating devices that can create electricity, right? So beyond Overunity means that I didn't have to expend as much energy as I can generate, right? And that's what Overunity means. So the issue here is that every type of way to generate energy that is known, like officially known to man, although I do know of some that go beyond this now and are true Overunity devices, it requires the same amount of energy to create the output of energy. You can transfer the energy from one type of energy, kinetic energy, right, to a different type of energy, right? For example, with like windmills, etc. You can transfer between, because energy cannot be created, or matter cannot be created nor destroyed, right? And that's the concept of it. So we have the rules in physics, which are the laws of thermodynamics, right? And so to create a certain amount of energy creates a certain amount of input of energy. It's just transforming it from one form to another. Turbines that are underwater that are able to capture energy. They can do it relatively more efficiently because the energy is already inherent to the ocean, but you're not creating more energy than was already existent.
Yeah.
Follow what
So
I'm saying?
you have two billiard balls, right? One is
Mhm.
sitting still. You strike it. The other one billiard ball. The force strikes the other billiard ball. It now is in motion because of the energy that was transferred from the force, but it doesn't have extra energy from somewhere. It's
That's right.
right
That's
now.
right.
And if we take that concept, okay, so let's back up for a second. I want everybody to understand that you you went to college for music, and
Mhm. One
so
of the
to
things. Uh-huh.
one of the things, right? And so to apply or to have this thought process, you have a very very fundamental foundation in music theory and music knowledge, and then you
Yes.
apply the science to it, but you're not like suddenly you're not musical because of this. You went to school for this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you
Yeah, I was already
understand
a
it.
musician, for sure.
Now, it was announced today, and so talking about physics, and I said this earlier today that I think that we're about to go into an era of new physics. We've got standards and we've got theories and we've got Einstein and we've got quantum. We've got these areas, but and I think it's about to go beyond that. And I'll tell you why. It was announced today, and measurement is always, it's one of the fundamental problems that we have in observation and measurement. But today it was announced for the first time, quantum pairs have been entangled and measured at CERN. Okay, not for the first time ever. And now that they know how to go through this process, holy crap, we can measure and observe an entanglement. Observation and measurement is like the biggest issue of all when it comes to this. And I would suggest that this, if we continue down this path, we're going to be on the other side of physics into new physics that are going to rewrite and create way beyond where we are today. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That's the problem you're talking about with measurement is something referred to as the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen problem, right? EPR. And it says that you can't measure something without impacting it and changing it. So the very act of measuring something can actually impact the outcome of that thing. Well, we know that it, at least in part, to be true. It's like we also have something called Hawthorne effect in science, which says that, what gets measured gets done, right? Because it changes your expectation. And when you start realizing that you can't separate the observation from the observer, you can't separate the observer from his or her conditioning biases, right? So when you have a shift in expectation, that's going to have an impact on something called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in physics. So this is exactly the challenge and problem. And so what you're talking about is that CERN has now come out and said, no, we've overcome this problem. And we've found another solution for it. And I'm very excited to read that paper. I haven't read it yet, but I definitely will as soon as it's available. But, basically quantum entanglement, I wasn't thinking that this was far off though, because quantum entanglement already won the Nobel Prize in 2022. And the cover of Scientific American basically stated local realism is false, and this year's Nobel Prize winners proved it. So that was the first step. That was the first step to basically the solution of what you're talking about now about overcoming the measurement problem, because those two issues were somewhat entangled already, right?
Right.
No pun intended. But basically, we have to start rethinking what the physical world is. And that's why I want to show you what's on my screen. If you can let me share the screen.
I'm gonna pull it up now. Here we go.
Okay. So here you can see 0 to the power of 0 up here in the upper right corner here. 0 to the power of 0 equals 1. Now, how in the heck can that be? Nothing to the power of nothing equals 1. Well, you might say, oh, Robert, I know a little bit about math and this, and anything to the power of 0 can equal 1. Okay, but let me explain to you why. Let's go beyond deeper, that it's not just a rule. It really is the correct answer. So here's how we'll find that correct answer, right? So if I now take 0, right, 0.5 to the power of, just like this, 0.5, it's going to give me an answer that's 0.707, right? So we've got 0.707. Now, let's get closer to 0. So let's divide each of those parts by 10. So now let's take 0.05, right, to the power, again, of 0.05. Wait, hang on a second. I didn't put it in right. 0.05. We're going to do this again. 0.05 to the power of 0.05. 0.86. So I just took two numbers that were 10 times smaller than their predecessor numbers, and now I got a larger number, right? So let's keep going.
Man, I love this.
So now let's take 0.000005 to the power of, right, 0.000005, so 5 zeros.
Ooh, right.
0.999. Okay, so now let's do 10 zeros, and you can probably guess where this is going. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5.
Almost there. Yeah.
So as I get closer and closer to 0 to the power of 0, it's actually creating the number 1. So from the vacuum of nothingness, which is supposed to be 0, we can create everythingness. What does that sound like to you?
Heavy.
And who designed this system?
Something divine.
Yes, so that means that nothing, when it actually achieves nothing, is not really nothing.
That's right. What, wasn't that a song by Billy Preston or Stevie Wonder? Right?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Something from nothing is something. I forget. Anyway. This is very, very, very interesting. And now, are there mathematicians out there that will say no to this?
You know what? There are some that would argue that, it's not determinable. So the Google calculator gets it right, and it says 1 is the correct answer. But there are other calculators that will simply say no answer, like the Apple calculator will say no answer, or it's not something that can be determined. But the truth is, it is 1. It's absolutely 1. And there are many proofs that you can find on YouTube as well by number file that prove that 0.999 repeating is equal to 1. It's not that it rounds to 1, it actually is 1. So this is a fact of mathematics. And there are many people, including Leonard Euler, who wrote proofs on 0.9 repeating as its equivalency to the number 1. So what does this mean? It literally means that from nothingness can come everythingness. So it already implies some type of higher intelligence.
That has to be taught, right? You're not out the guy or gal that 5,000-10,000 years ago is out in the savannah being chased by a cheetah, right? And it's about to be a really bad day. Is not going to stop and go, wait a minute, 0 to the power of 0, right? No, it does. It doesn't work that way, does it? And
No.
and back then, if we are led to believe Orthodox education, that ancient man was foraging for seeds and wearing animal skins. And clearly that's not the case when you get to situations like the Giza Plateau being leveled off and the geometry that's applied and true north and everything else that's there. We don't need to get into that. But we are taught that a couple of weeks before that, they were just nomads in the desert and they just wandered onto the Giza Plateau and just happened to be able to do this. No, it can't be. It can't be that way. It has to be taught. It comes from somewhere else first.
Absolutely. So this is where, I would go and show you another thing next, which also will probably blow your mind. And I can show it to you on a geometric software that's called GeoGebra. And GeoGebra will allow me to present to you how the universe can construct the entire universe in the simplicity of one geometric form, which is mind-boggling in and of itself. It's so mind-boggling. And I don't know how this just gets missed. I really don't understand how it gets missed from, what we all are experiencing and what we learned in school, etc. That's really, it's like mind-blowing to me. So
Yeah,
let me
well,
go
like
ahead
I
and
said,
show this to you.
it's your Robert Langdon brain. You can't help yourself. You can't. And as you're pulling that up, and I've got it here. You want me to just go ahead and bring it up?
Yeah, go ahead. Mhm. Okay. So this is GeoGebra, and GeoGebra, I can go in here and add anything to this, but basically I'll find a form called Metatron's cube, right? So Metatron's cube is a structure that the entire universe can be constructed out of. And it's exactly the esoteric symbology that that we all know so well, right? That it's simply the Star of David. It's literally the Star of David. So from scratch, I can do this. Let me pull this up. Okay. So from this, okay, here we go. Whoops. All right. All right. I'm going to show you guys something here that is really, really unique. You're going to get a little geometry lesson today. All right. So we have here what's called an icosahedron. Now, how is this made? I'm going to show you how this is made, and I'm going to do this from scratch. So I'll put these axes back here so you can now see this. And from this, I can go, and I think if kids learn geometry this way, everyone would fall in love with math. Like literally. But unfortunately, we don't. And, whoops. There we go. All right. So, and this is going to be relevant to what we talk about in a moment as relates to the pyramids. Okay. So I just make a simple circle, right? And it's got a radius of 1. And from this, I could put an axis across it as well, just like this. And from this, I can create something called the flower of life, which you would recognize. And all I have to do is just go like this, go like this. And then right here, this is the flower of life, where this intersection happens, like that. And then like this. It's how beautiful it is. I don't have to measure anything to make this because the radius is creating this. And from this, I get a perfect hexagon. So now look, I've got this perfect hexagon right here. See this?
Yep.
I'm just taking the line intersections that happen from these overlapping circles. And then I can create a honeycomb. Right? Pretty neat, right? But now look, I take this, cut across here and across here, and then I can get rid of this axis thing. And now from this, I'm going to create a triangle. And the hexagon's the only shape that has the same radius as its side length. So this length right here of its side that I'm going to highlight right here is the same as the length from here to the center. That's why it's an equilateral triangle all around, right?
Right.
So it makes it quite simple. And then
one more triangle. Yep.
Now this looks familiar, right?
Yep.
Now from this, I'm going to take and make another line and just find the intersecting point right here. And then I'm going to take this one, come down like this, do the same thing like this. It's really simple. I don't need to figure out where to put it because I just have to find these extra intersection points. You see what I'm doing?
Yep.
It's pretty simple. Just go like this. And I didn't have to measure anything. It's the path for me is already taken, right? It's like obvious. I just have to know where to go with this. And then I've got this another Star of David inside of this.
Wow.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then I can make another hexagon around it. You see this? Now this is pretty genius, right? It's like, what the heck, man? This is pretty freaking genius. How in the heck did someone figure this out? Now, if I want to make what's called the Platonic solids, which are the shapes that make up virtually the entire periodic table, they're derivations of the periodic table that are all related to, this is that table of elements, right? Or the wave of elements. They're all related to what's called the Platonic solids. So the Platonic solids would be, the first of these would be a tetrahedron. So here's a tetrahedron. And now I have a tetrahedron that is basically inside this structure. So from here to here to here to here to here. So it's a three-dimensional structure. That's a tetrahedron. You see that?
Yep. And it builds itself.
And it builds itself.
Right.
And it builds itself. Now, the next shape that you could find pretty easily would be a cube, right? So where can we find a cube inside here? Well, the cube is already right here, right? I'll just take this tool and I'll show you that from this to this, now this two-dimensional form of the hexagon just became a three-dimensional form of a cube. And with a little shading, it'll be even easier for you to see.
Sure.
See what's happened? Now you've got a cube.
I'm going to ask you a very fundamental, I don't want to sound doofusy here because that's too easy for me to do. But is this an infinite situation like Fibonacci or another number? Is this something that can continue and continue and right?
Yes. In fact, if I took this and I replicate this 6-point perspective, by the way, this works in hyperdimension as well. All geometric forms that it can exist in the entire universe can be created with this simple form and all their hyperperspective viewpoints. So they look three-dimensional and four-dimensional and five-dimensional. It's all hidden within this one structure. And this structure happens to be the most often seen in all religious symbology in the world, not just in Judaism, but in every single religion, from Buddhism to just spiritual lines of thought. The Merkaba is known the world over. And it's all related to this flower of life structure. So from this, not only do I have a cube, which now you could see because I just highlighted, right, that. And so basically we now take this cube out so we don't mix with mix and match with our vision. But now from this, I can now create even a dodecahedron, which is a complex structure. From here to here to here. I'm just taking the line intersections, and now I've got a pentagon. You see this?
Right.
And now I've got another pentagon that comes along here, and it even looks like it's three-dimensional, doesn't it?
It does.
Like it's in perspective. What the heck? Who created this system? So this is why people that believe that there's no higher intelligence just haven't spent time doing geometry like this. Because if they did, then it becomes freaking obvious that somebody made this system. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's crazy town.
It's crazy town, right? And it's like
yeah.
anyone who understands geometry knows that you have to comply with these rules that are set up. But who set up the rules? And these rules are all within this. I don't even, the ancient Greeks, when they did geometry, they required that you didn't use a ruler because you should be able to do it without, God didn't need a ruler and neither do you. Right? Same concept. So this is.
I remember. Keep doing what you're doing here. I'll let you finish. In Karnak, when I went to the Temple of the Seven Gates, right, which is amazing, but in the back, behind the doorways, when you go into the second room, on the back half of those doorways, it's the frigging circle of life, right? And you look and you stop and you look. Oh, and then at the bottom of it, for some reason, are 7 ankhs, by the way, too, as well. But when you look at that, the flower of life and how ancient this was, but here you see it carved in stone, and in that case, it was pink granite. But with the doorways on the other side, it's very powerful. But they did that I'm sure, without a ruler, right? You have your circle with a radius of 1, and you just go from there.
Yeah. So wait a minute. I just created now 3 of the Platonic solids in higher dimension, 3rd dimension, from just this one structure.
It's crazy.
And from this, I can even, right? I can show you that I can create an icosahedron as well. And the icosahedron is quite easy to construct. Just got to take this, put another line here, put a line here. And then I can even create Archimedean solids. So from this, I take this line right here, and I got to have it come up to here. Same thing with here. And now I can create a 3-dimensional form that is going to give me the exact location of how to make an icosahedron. It's really simple. And these are just basic principles that we can all follow. So every shape, nothing is arbitrary. Like, I'm not seeing every line that space-time has, but all these lines must exist for these things to exist. This is why Einstein said that space-time is geometry, not that it is described by geometry. He said it is geometry, and he's not wrong. And so that's what I'm saying. Once you understand these principles, that's why geometers the world over have always become very prominent, very often philosophers. Whether it's Plato or Pythagoras or Aristophanes or any one of these guys, Democritus, they were all geometers. Euclid. And this is a construction box that the universe uses. It's like the software design of the universe. That once you understand these principles, then you can adhere to those principles. Then all of a sudden, you can make pretty much anything. So I'm going to make now an icosahedron. I'm going to go like this. And I'll change the color so you can see. I'll make the icosahedron red. And then so every single shape that exists in the universe can now be constructed in this way.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Did you know this?
Obviously not. And right now, I'm close to losing my shit. Yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah. What are the implications of this to you? That's the question I've got. What does this
Well,
mean to you?
yeah, it to when we here's my thoughts on this. When you have the argument about a determined universe, right?
Mhm.
And that free will is off the table. And there are a
Yep.
lot of big brains out there that will argue this point. And they will then laugh and say, "Yeah, we were going to argue this point anyway because it was it was already determined that we would have this debate." But
Yep.
when you see stuff like this is where there's something else going on. There's a thought process that was applied to this. This isn't particles just deciding to do this because of gravity and some EM mathematics being thrown in the quantum world. I don't see it that way. There's something else. Sacred is the right word. There's something else intelligent that's behind it.
There is some intelligent. I mean, come on. This is intelligent as intelligence gets. We don't
Yep.
have anything or anyone who could come up with something as sublime and beautiful
Right.
as this all at the same time. I mean, come on. It's like to say that this is like, let's throw it and call it random, is just our inability to see the pattern that is beyond our level of perception because we're in a lower dimensionally limited avatar of experience.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You don't want to believe it. Well,
No.
you've got your blinders on, and you are going to stay in your own belief system. This is it's too paradigm shifting.
Absolutely. So it's like, when you start to really grok this, then the implications are, wait a minute, we're not alone. For sure, we're not alone.
It's pure grok. It's pure grok.
Yeah. We're not alone. The universe is beautifully designed and perfectly designed. And maybe everything that I thought was happening to me is happening for and through me instead. You see how
Wow.
when you get into this geometry, it changes your entire perspective on what the universe actually is. You get my point now?
Yeah, I do.
So now you've got this icosahedron, which is right here. You've got a dodecahedron, you've got a cube, and you've also got I could easily from here make something called an octahedron as well. Every shape within the Platonic solids are all here.
You can see that. You can see that. Now, let's take this concept and this part of Robert Grant's brain and swing this over to walking up to the Great Pyramid going, I see music.
So the first thing that hit me with the pyramids was trying to understand, okay, why were these constructed? What is the purpose? And can we find something? We don't have any writing on the pyramids per se. We've since discovered quite a bit, but what clues can we take away that maybe the builders left for us to figure out? And the first thing I started thinking of was, why are the slope angles of each pyramid entirely different? So the slope angle for the Great Pyramid is 51.85 degrees. The slope angle for Khafre Pyramid, the second pyramid, is 53.13 degrees. So not 51.85, but 53.13. And they're very exact. Like, why? And we can measure these. And then why is the third pyramid 51.34 degrees? Is there something we can tie together as a pattern? And what I realized was that when we look at the relationships that would actually create the relationship of integers that would create those exact slope angles, they turn out to be, starting with the smallest pyramid first, Menkaure pyramid is 5 for the height, and 1/2 the base is 4. So the proportionality is 5/4. And that gives you exactly a 51.34 degree angle. That's precise. So then the second pyramid, Khafre pyramid, in order to make a 53.13 degree angle, you have to have a 3-4-5 triangle, which means that the height has to be 4 proportionally, and the base, half the base, has to be 3. And then its inverse, the full base over the height, becomes 6, because 3 was the 1/2 base, 6/4, which reduces down to 3/2. So now we've got 5/4 for Menkaure pyramid, 4/3 because its height over its 1/2 base is 4/3, and its inverse, the full base over the height, gives us 3/2. So wait, do you see a pattern? 5/4, 4/3, 3/2. What should be next?
2/1.
Okay, so now let's take 2/1. Oh, that doesn't work. Dang it. The Great Pyramid doesn't match that.
Nope.
But guess what it does match? It matches 2/1 pi.
Oh, no. Really?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is exactly the pattern. You have 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, 2/1 pi. Boom. And one circle is synonymous with understanding of the oneness. The one divided, which starts with a cell, right? The cell will divide itself. So 2/1 pi. So wait a minute. So that's going to give us exactly 51.8539 degree angle? Yes. So wait, this is challenging the notion then of, okay, well, I thought that Khufu was the one who built the Great Pyramid, that Khafre, his son, built the second pyramid, and his grandson, Menkaure, built the third. So wait, you're telling me that the reason why Menkaure got stuck with the smallest pyramid was not because he ran out of his father's money or his grandfather's money, but rather because he had to follow this pattern of 2/1 pi, 3/2, 4/3, and 5/4. Now, I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to get anyone that I'm in a relationship with to agree with what I want to do with my kitchen compared to their burial site. How are you going to get someone many, many years in advance to agree that, okay, now the two first pyramids were 2/1 pi and 3/2 and 4/3, so that you need to be stuck now at the 5/4. Well, I don't like 5/4. How do you do that? Really difficult. So what this does is it challenges the notion of the timing of when the pyramids were built. I believe they're all built at the same time.
I do too. I do too. I 100% believe that. And okay, I don't want to get sideways. I want to stay on track here. But let me just say this. That doesn't fit the dogma. It fits the facts, right? But it doesn't fit the dogma. Therefore, it will never, right, be agreed to. But it doesn't fit the dogma because the dogma of the Great Pyramid, 20 years, 20,000, workers, one block every, minute, and everything that we have been fed, that has become truth. And Robert, you know this as well as anybody. But what they don't tell you is that Khafre and Khufu and Menkaure were built at the same time. So now we're not talking about 2.5 million stones. We're talking about 7 million. We're not talking about 20,000 people. We're talking about 60, 80, 100,000 people. And the population of Egypt at that time was 500,000 people in the entire country. So that means if you cut that in half, men and women, right? Cut that in half, and you're down to 250,000 people. Then get rid of the babies, get rid of the old and the sick, right? The able-bodied middle. That means every single male in the country of Egypt was building pyramids. And that's simply not the case. But they don't want to talk. That doesn't fit into their dogma, right? And so therefore, no. But I believe that they were built at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if I'm gonna show the screen now, if I could.
Sure.
And
yeah, it's so funny how when something gets repeated enough, we just get tired, right? And we tap out.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We tap out. It's like, okay, whatever. But no, that's simply not the case. And for 200 years, since I get, I'll say Napoleon. I'll just stay in the safe zone. Since modern Egyptology with the French and the British, that's the same stuff that's being taught today. There's nothing new there. Okay,
That's
what are
right.
we looking at? What are
So
we
let me
looking
show
at?
you here. So what I'm showing you here is the exact construct of the Great Pyramid. So you have 2 for the height of the pyramid from the center at its base to the apex is 2 units. You can see the number 2 right next to it. And then the base, right, is 1 pi. Okay, so that's 1 pi, which is 3.14159. Okay, so now we're going to play this out so you can see this. That gives you exactly the 51.853974012687 degree angle of the slope of the Great Pyramid. Only that combination can do that. Only that proportionality can do that. And it has to be reduced to its smallest form, right? So you're taking out the common denominators, et cetera, and you're finding the smallest form of that fractional representation. And 2 over 1 pi is that. So that is the Khufu pyramid. That is the Great Pyramid. Now,
That's crazy.
inside the
That's crazy. That's crazy town. That's crazy town, Robert. Well done. Well done.
Isn't it beautiful? It's like super beautiful.
Yeah.
So
well done.
the King's
That's elegant.
Chamber.
That's elegant. That's elegant.
So the King's Chamber is a 2-to-1 chamber. It's 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide. Right? So it's another 2 over 1, which gives us a doubled octave, an octave representation. Right? So then its inverse would be you double the base and make it the numerator from the denominator. And so you end up with 2 over 2, which is unison. So now you've got unison and the next octave up represented. And then you've got 2 over 1 pi, which is telling us something about going on a circle because it's got pi in there. And then additionally, if we place a square inside of that circle, like you're going to see right here, we place a square inside that circle and look what we've got. We've got exactly 1.4142. The length of this diagonal line right here is the square root of 2. So the Great Pyramid, and then the radius of that circle is 1. So the Great Pyramid embeds within it 2 over 1 for the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, 2 over 2, which is unison for the King's Chamber as well, the inverse. It also has within it 2 over 1 pi, because that's the height over the base. And then in addition, this circle right here that you see would be 2 as its height over 1 pi. 1 pi would be half of that circle. Exactly. So the diameter over the semicircle is also 2 over 1 pi. Now, all of this is embedded in the one thing, right? It's all here. So then that means that this is now tying back to music, because the center of a logarithmic progression in a scale will be the square root of 2 times its unison note. So you start with the unison note, which is 1 over 1 or 2 over 2 in this case. You double the octave and it comes up to, 2 times the unison note. You multiply the unison note by the square root of 2, and you get the middle of the octave, which creates separation, light from darkness. And the square root of 2 then represents scarcity and suffering and difficulty. That's why in music, we're talking about the note that's the central thesis of the tritone, which you probably know is like the devil's sound.
The saddest of, the saddest of all keys. Yes.
The saddest of all keys. It's the one that makes everyone kind of go, ooh, right? Darth Vader's coming in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Great Pyramid is taking us on a circular cyclic journey into something that's higher knowledge and understanding. Okay. So now let's look to see what else we can find, to see if there's other intentionality. And there definitely is, right? All of these, here's the 1/1 unison. Here's the 2/2, right? Within the King's Chamber as well. The 2/1, the root 2/1 is giving us the diminished fifth. So we've got doubled octave, 2/1 in the King's Chamber. We've got 1/1 in unison, and we've got root 2/1, which is diminished fifth. Beautiful, right? Now let's look at the next pyramid.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's jazz.
It's epic, right?
Jazz.
So now I'm
epic.
just going to take the same method, and to get the slope angle that is the measured value by Flinders Petrie of Caffrey Pyramid, which is 53.13 degrees, I'm now going to figure out what is the ratio of proportionality, the smallest form of it, that I have to make. And it turns out that the Caffrey Pyramid is 4/3. Right? So here's the 4/3 right here, which is this pyramid right here. The height is 4, and the 1/2 base is 3. And then the next pyramid, Menkari Pyramid, is going to be 5/4. It's a simplicity of 5 height and 4 is its base. So that gives us exactly the measured values of both pyramids.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah,
And the fact that nobody had done this before is mind-blowing.
Now, did you help me? What's going on in your mind when you started to put this together? Was this a visual thing, right? Was it something that you were seeing and you were watching the numbers appear in front of you, or did you sit down and actually do the math?
I sat down and actually did the math.
Right.
And when I did the math, something about it also was strange. It was the same thing as when I discovered the Alpha Omega in the Great Pyramid in the King's Chamber on the rim of the sarcophagus. The reason I discovered it is because I remembered it.
Continue.
I remembered being inside the King's Chamber. I was there in 2018. I told all my friends I'm going to discover something in the pyramid before I went. It was my second trip to Egypt. And I knew, and I was drawing in my notebook all week, the week before that, Alpha Omega, everywhere. And then the night before, I was under the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, and I discovered the Alpha Omega etched into the floor in the cave where the Ark of the Covenant had been hidden for 1,000 years, called Solomon's Quarry. I thought, oh, that's why I was been drawing the Alpha Omega all week. I found a mound of stone that was limestone that had turned into quartz crystal. And right on the floor in that same exact spot, deep in the cave, was Alpha Omega carved. And I later learned, 2 years later, that that's the exact spot where the Royal Arch Freemasons go to celebrate the Ark of the Covenant every year. So I thought that was the reason I kept drawing Alpha Omega. Plus, I'm in the Holy Land, so maybe there's something spiritual there. Then I went to the Great Pyramid. That was on May 6th in Jerusalem. May 7th, I went to the Great Pyramid. I had 12 of my friends with me, and one of them was laying in the sarcophagus intoning, and I had a flashback memory to being in the pyramid with only 5 other people, so I was the 6th. And I saw a blue-green light on top of the sarcophagus rim pressing Alpha Omega into the rose granite. It was like a weird timeline shift. And then I found myself back, like it stopped, and then I found myself back in 2018, and I look at the rim of the sarcophagus exactly where I had just seen it. And there it was, an Alpha Omega right in the rim that no one had ever seen before.
The first time I went into the Great Pyramid, I got nothing. All right? Nothing. Now, it's impressive, but I had other spiritual and other things that happened throughout Egypt, but the Great Pyramid itself, no. Second time, Robert, and I think I shared this with you, but anyway, had the great, I was inside by myself. I was the first one in, and I told everybody, that included Billy and Elizabeth, everybody outside. I said, okay, All right, you guys give me 20 minutes or whatever, All right, and then you guys come on, but I'm by myself. So I go in, I go into the king's chamber, and the first thing I do is lay down in the box, and I'm videotaping. I wasn't supposed to, but I was. Screw it, I was by myself. But nothing. But when I got out of the box, I stood in the middle of the room. I wasn't oming or doing anything like that. I was in my pragmatic self, right? My dick self, I should say. And that's when the universe slaps you, right? That's right. So I go up and I lean against the wall, opposite of the entrance, right? The entrance is behind me to my left.
Yep.
And so I put my hands on the wall and I kind of like assume the position, right? So my hands are on the wall and I kind of lean up against it. And I just have this moment to myself. And that's when it happened, man. And it started like in my feet and in my hands and kind of met in the middle of my body. But I felt this frigging charge like went through my body. And I stood there for a couple of minutes and I enjoyed it. And I went, okay, this place isn't dead. Right? Which was my first impression, from a year before. Now it's a year later and I'm by myself and I had this. There's other stuff that's personal. I don't want to get into it, but there's something there. I can't put it into words. And I know that there's people out there, Robert, and you face it all the time, that go, man, bullshit. Well, you haven't done it, right? You haven't been in the king's. You haven't done it. So until you do that, and something happens or it doesn't, then you have a point of reference where you can debate me on this. But yeah, it was incredible. It was pretty incredible. That was a head scratcher.
It's because of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and because of things like observation itself and measurement being tied to our experience, then you have to realize that there's really kind of at least two, maybe three types of people in the world. People that don't believe at all in miracles and those that do. But because in this life we don't get what we deserve, rather we get what we expected, at least at a subconscious level, then you have to recognize that people that don't believe in miracles will never experience them by definition. People that don't believe in these aspects of how their consciousness is influencing the world around them will basically go through life and life will simply happen to them rather than for and through them. And this is a reality of the situation. It's the physics that's going to prove this out. We create the world around us through our judgments, because in this world, we attract everything we judge until we no longer judge what we attracted. And this is what we'll experience over and over and over again. And we'll call it fate, or we'll call it happenstance or coincidence. They just simply will not call it for what it might actually be, because that's something that they cannot face. They simply cannot face it. It's like, I don't get a lot of pushback on this analysis that I'm just showing you right now on the pyramids, because the Egyptologists aren't mathematicians. And they can't dispute that those are the slope angles of the pyramids.
Right. That's crazy to me. Let me ask you this. Egypt, ancient Egypt, wherever you go, everything is documented. It's documented in sculpture, on walls, paintings, papyrus. It's like everywhere. But the one mystery, right? Like 5 4 4 3 3 2. That is some serious engineering and math and thought put into this that isn't being orally instructed to build these pyramids. You're not doing that orally. You've got to work this out. But we don't have that. Is it?
Well, let's first, before we jump to the why, let's try to first understand a bit more. Okay.
Sure.
So let's try to understand a bit more. So what else is going on here? Right. So first of all, these other pyramids, right? The other two right here, that create the 51.34, right? So you've got here 4. So this is 0 right here, and this is 4. So that's 4 over 3. You see that? Right? So here's 3 right here, and that is 3. Okay, so 4 over 3, and then this is 5. So this is going to be, 4 and then up to 9. This would be 9 on the scale coming down right here, right? And then this is 4. So it's lining up with this line right here of 4. You see that?
Yep.
5 over 4, 4 over 3, which is also inverted, 4 over, or rather 6 over 4, which would be the 3 doubled, now made a numerator, right? So 6 over 4 would give you 3 over 2. So now you've got 5, 4, so 5 over 4, 4 over 3, 3 over 2, and 2 over 1 pi. And then inside the Great Pyramid is 2 over 1. And then that also converts to 1 over 1. And so you've literally got the full tetractys here. Pythagorean tetractys, which is what Pythagoras taught in his mystery schools. He spent 30 years in Egypt. Maybe there's something with the tetractys, which is also depicted on a triangle. What a surprise, right? So the tetractys is somehow embedded in this. And what is Pythagoras most well known for? Well, he's most well known for music and tuning. Pythagorean tuning.
That's right.
Is what he came up with. He was able to identify all the musical intervals that are mathematical ratios that create the different tones in music. And so what this is this comes out to be, I already said that this was the diminished fifth of the Great Pyramid, but it's also the octave double and the unison note in the one pyramid. And then you've got the 3 over 2 and the 4 over 3, which is the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth in music. And then 5 over 4 is the major third, the major third and the minor sixth. So the first 6 musical intervals, and then the last 2, which are unison and doubling the octave, are now accounted for in 3 pyramids. Exactly.
Here's the rub. Here's the problem, right? This was 2,000 years, allegedly, before Pythagoras was born. That's the mind bender right there, right? It's just, we give all the credit to he was a smart guy, no doubt about it. But clearly, this was represented in the construction of the Giza Plateau. 2200. When was Pythagoras? It was like 400 BC.
600 BC.
600 BC. 600 BC. Okay,
Plato
so
was 400 BC.
2,200 years, man. 2,200 years. But
we also know that understanding of right triangles and these relationships of trigonometry was already known because we have something called Plimpton 322, which is a clay tablet from Sumer that had the trigonometry relationships embedded on it 1,500 years before Pythagoras. So this knowledge was known. Pythagoras should be credited for simply keeping record of it so that we're not stuck in the dark ages.
Correct.
So, but he also did some pretty brilliant things. Now, let's see if we can find more proof and evidence that this was intentional. Okay. So let's look at this. So if I take what I'm going to show you here is a simple square, which is 1/2 the base of the Great Pyramid, which is going to be half pi, right? So 1/2 pi, because this was pi for the full base width. So now we have 1/2 pi. And what are we going to have for the perimeter of that square? Look at that. The perimeter of the square is exactly 6.283185307. That's 2 pi. It's also a math constant called tau. 2 pi is also known as tau. And what's interesting is the circle that goes from the base of the pyramid to the apex, and that be its diameter, is equal to 6.2831. So you have a circumference that is matching the perimeter of the square. That's called squaring the circle. That's an ancient problem that nobody knew how to solve.
Correct. And doing it all without measurement. You only need the geometry. And then everything works itself out. That's insane.
That's
insane.
right. So you're talking about some super high level knowledge, right? So now we've got that. So that proves that the perimeter and the circumference, you see these two numbers, they're the same numbers.
That's right.
Perimeter of the square and the circumference of the circle. Now let's see what else we can find. Okay, so now let's take and see what happens when we take the circumference of the circle going from the base of Khafre pyramid, right, to its apex. Its circumference is 12.56637. And that is matching exactly the area of the cross section of the pyramid's triangular shape. So wait, we just squared the circle above. Now we are triangling the circle through area and circumference values. Pretty beautiful, right? Like,
yeah,
wow.
It's elegant. It's elegant.
Okay, let's see what else we find.
It's too perfect.
It's too perfect. Okay, so now we've got Menkaure pyramid. We're going to make a square, and the square is also going to be 1/2 of the base of the Menkaure pyramid. So that's 4, right? Because it's 5/4.
Uh-huh.
And now look, we've got a perimeter of 16. And now let's see what happens. We actually have the perimeter of 16 is the only square that is able to match its area. Because 4 squared is equal to 16, and that's the area calculation, and 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 16 for the perimeter. So now we have matching perfectly the square, matching perfectly the area of the circle and the circumference of the circle, and also the area of the triangle. And then also the square of the Great Pyramid, 1/2 of its base, matching the circumference of the circle that goes from its base to its apex. And it's all perfect.
All done without math.
All done without math.
Yeah. The math works itself out. Oh, it's crazy.
So, but where's the divine triangle? So we're missing one triangle, right? And that's one of the discoveries we made at a place called Abu Rawash. Now, this is the form structure I was just showing you that all forms and structures are made from. The flower of life, or Metatron's cube.
Right.
So Metatron's cube is what made the dodecahedron that I made on the geometric page, that I was basically making that icosahedron, which represents a cluster of water. Earth is the cube anciently. How did Plato know that the structure of carbon is a cube? How did Plato know that water clusters were actually the exact structure of the icosahedron? He didn't have a microscope. How did he know this? All of this information somehow was granted to him, and this is the structure of space-time. And all of the pyramids can now be constructed, this is one of the discoveries I made, using Metatron's cube as an architectural plan. Look at this. I don't need to measure anything. I just have to make Metatron's cube. And now from this grid of Metatron's cube, I just simply take the place where the line intersections are happening, where the green line goes, where those green circles are.
Right.
Use that to then find where it intersects at a point on a triangle above, and you'll see this in just a second. So using this, I don't need to measure anything. That green circle is right there. I plot my compass radius from the base of Metatron's cube. Right there at the base, I plot the compass right there, and that's going to give me exactly the proportion and relationship to construct without any measurement the Great Pyramid. This is an architectural plan.
Oh, okay. Pause this. There are some Egyptologists that will say they did all of this as you are presenting it with a stick and a string.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
You've
Well,
seen
the
the
beauty of this
demonstration.
is you could do this with a stick and string, because the only thing that you have to know to make this is just use the same radius value for all the circles of the flower of life. And
Right.
all the rest of it is just inherent to the intersecting lines.
And if you, I have no issues with the stick and string idea, but to me, that pushes way beyond the intelligence of an Einstein. And you have to go back to what period of time that we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, you do this with a stick and string, you have an intelligence level
Oh, it's
that
beyond.
beyond.
It's beyond. It's beyond. So now I was able to create from just Metatron's cube, which is the same structure that makes all shapes in the universe. I was able to create the Great Pyramid and its slope angle without any measurement. Okay. Now I also take a square, which is half the base of the Great Pyramid. And then from here, also, I find how to construct Caffrey Pyramid exactly in proportion without any measurements, and exactly why Caffrey Pyramid is the height that it is exactly what I'm showing you now. So you take that circle that goes up to the top where that red dot is,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make 3, 4, 5 triangles inside here, which is done by making these diagonal lines at the half points. And then this is going to create exactly the proportion where that intersecting line is right here, the red dot. It's going to create exactly the proportion that is the Caffrey Pyramid and the height proportion versus the Great Pyramid.
Correct.
It's perfect.
Yes, correct.
The height
Correct.
of the Great Pyramid is 481 feet. The height of Caffrey Pyramid is 471 feet. And that's the proportional reference. It's found exactly inherent to the lines of Metatron's cube. And then I could create the same thing. Now, to understand one point that's really interesting is if I take the square that shows intentionality again, if I take the square, which represents the masculine of the Great Pyramid, so it's 1/2 the base of the Great Pyramid, and I overlay that with a circle that goes to the top of Caffrey Pyramid, right? So Caffrey Pyramid is the red dot right here. Then something unusual happens. The square of Khufu touches perfectly the circle of Caffrey right here at the corner. This is not semi or rounding. It's exactly perfect. So what's happening is the Caffrey Pyramid proportions are squaring the circle in a different way, right? And showing us the intentionality of the square of Khufu Pyramid, the Great Pyramid. And it's perfect. And you're going to see that proportion showing up again with Menkaure. The square that is touching exactly the circle right here on both sides is also matched in Menkaure Pyramid, which you'll see in just a moment.
And we'll see the
So where
slope angle. We'll see the slope angle change.
That's right. That's right. You'll see the slope angle change and everything. So now from here, this then takes it, and Alan Green and I worked on these videos together, and they're called The Holy Grail of Geometry, and you can watch it in detail if you wish, and with all the narration. I'm just taking you through it quickly. But basically, we found unequivocally that Metatron's cube is the architectural blueprint of the Giza Plateau. So by constructing this square, right, which was the same Khufu square, and then finding where they intersect the circles on both sides, right there with those diagonal lines, that defined exactly the height of Menkaure Pyramid. So we didn't need to measure anything.
Right.
And then with that, because the diagonal lines are defining exactly where a square's corners should be, where those green points are, the first one and the second one.
Right.
Now we just place a square right there, and that's going to give us, and then double the base of that square, and that gives us the Menkaure Pyramid. Here we go. So here's a square. We double its base. So you got the same relationship with the square and the circle touching exactly at those points. We double its base, and it gives us the exact proportionality of Menkaure pyramid. Just like that. And then we just take it right up to that white dot. And that's exactly the right size proportion of Menkaure pyramid versus the Great Pyramid and versus Khafre. So we're looking at the blueprint here of the construction of the three pyramids and answering a question for a long time. And it's all in the mathematics.
Well, it's crazy. Yeah.
So this is a different way for us to understand what we're really looking at. But then let's go a little bit deeper to understand what are these musical ratios, and is it going to give us like Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Is it
Right.
dun,
Yeah, right. And have you you're a musician. Have you thought about what ancient Egyptian music may have sounded like? I know we're going to hear some stuff now, but I mean, were they grooving? Was it rhythmic? Was melodic? Was it melancholy? And the sounds. What did they use for the instruments too, as well? I mean, I've thought about this so much. They had music.
Sure they had lyres, right? They had lyres. They had all kinds of instruments, right?
Yeah.
And they used a 24-note scale, a quarter tone scale, not a semitone scale, because that encompasses all the pentatonic notes. So what we listened to, My Girl, dum bum ba dun 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 dun, that's the pentatonic scale. And that's why, and pentatonic always sounds good. Like you could do those hand pans, they're all pentatonic scales.
You can't screw it up.
You can't screw it up. It always sounds good together.
Yeah.
Right. But we can't reconcile the pentatonic scales with regular, 12 notes in Western music. So we have to make adjustments for this. But if you use a 24-note scale, all the pentatonic notes are inside the 24-note scale. And the Egyptians used a 24-note scale, which becomes important.
Okay, so so that would mean if they had pianos, they would have twice the keys.
That's right.
Right? Guitars or lyra, they would have twice the amount of frets.
That's right.
Yes. Holy crap. That's really messing with my head. And can it harmonically? I guess it could.
Also, why we have a 24,000-year cycle.
Man, could you imagine tuning that piano?
Well, maybe that's what we're about to do.
Yeah, you like how I set you up for that?
Absolutely. So now check this out. So
the height to the base, 1/2 the base of Menkaure pyramid, the smallest pyramid, is 5/4.
That's a major third in music.
The height of the Khafre pyramid is 4/3, which is a perfect fourth. And the relationship of the Great Pyramid is the diminished fifth. The Great Pyramid is actually the imperfect or the unfinished mankind. All of the musical intervals, there are 13 musical intervals. Every one of them is represented perfectly in the proportional dimensions of.
Look at that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 pi.
And I'm just going to let you know that the audio is playing back through your microphone, not through the computer. So if we were playing back the files off of the hard drive directly, we would have that. But and I want everybody to understand what Robert is suggesting here. I'm just going to grab this in a very basic. I'm being very basic here. All right, so this is a guitar, and here are 12 notes from here to here. That's an octave, but that's chromatic. That's every note in the scale. There are 8 notes, 8 whole notes, but then you have the notes that are in between. And so what Robert is suggesting, this is the 12 note system that we run with today, but he's talking about 24. So there would be another note in between everything that is represented here. And
Correct.
so, to kind of, or like on a piano, you would double the keys. You would literally double the keys on a piano. Man, I wonder if that would just, oh man, that would open up the possible. Okay, so there's always that famous joke, the missing note, right? The missing note, and if you had a 24 note scale, you are introducing 12 notes that are not normally played in modern music.
Yep. That's right. You are correct.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy to me. My brain can't handle that. Could Mozart handle that? Could Bach handle that? Could Paganini handle that?
Yep. Exactly. I think they could. I think that that basically that's the, obviously where this is going, that there's a 24 note scale, and that's also telling us about the nature of time. You could say this: number in itself, in its abstract form, is what we call arithmetic. Number in space is what we call geometry. Number in time is what we call music. Number in space and time is what we call cosmology. Our understanding of time-space, space-time, and the way that it's measured actually can be found entirely inside of a compass. The number of minutes and seconds of a compass give us the actual volumetric of time. And I teach this in my television program, which is called Codex. And it's perfect. So this idea of, the number of minutes and seconds and of the compass and the volumetric of time is all embedded in dimensionality, expansion of dimensions. So let me go ahead and continue this.
Okay.
And show you what I mean by the musical interval. Okay. So the musical interval is basically giving us that all three pyramids are giving us a spectrum of light and a spectrum of sound. Light is simply the transverse representation of scalar sound. Scalar waves are compression waves that are in music. And light and sound are actually just opposite conditions of the same phenomenon. Just like gravity and electromagnetism are opposite conditions of the same phenomenon of electricity. So this is basically the full spectrum of sound and light. And what it's giving us is, of the 13 musical intervals that make up our chromatic scale, 8 of them are accounted for in simply the proportions of the three pyramids. And in addition to that, if we keep going with it, these are all the notes, right? It's missing it's just got truncated on the bottom, but the major and minor seventh, but they're all here as well. And all the pyramids that can be found are all here, right? And also we learned that the major second is exactly Saqqara pyramid. And the minor third is giving us also not only inverse base width of the Menkaure base over height, but also giving us the relationship of one of the pyramids at Abu Rawash, which is what we call the Philosopher's Stone Pyramid. It's 8 kilometers northwest of the Great Pyramid. So you literally have diminished fifth in the center of the scale, the fourth and the fifth, the major third, and the minor sixth. Okay, so wait a minute. The Great Pyramid is the diminished fifth and the unison and the octave, which you can't see on the bottom here. And in addition to that, the second pyramid right next to it is the fourth and the fifth in music. And Menkaure pyramid is the major third and the minor sixth. It's like in exactly the right order even. And that's what's going to give you precisely the slope angles that are the measured values for the three pyramids.
It's not coincidence.
No, this is showing extreme intentionality.
Right.
And what this is also showing is that our understanding, right? So when you listen to film, you're watching a movie, and they have a love scene, they always play major thirds because everyone loves the sound of a major third. It's like da 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 da. And then when it's heartbreak time, it's da da for the major third, and then the minor sixth is da 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 da. It's the same two notes, just one of them is an octave higher in the reverse order. And guess what? People report when they listen to this music in peer-reviewed studies, they report a sensation of heartbreak when they listen to da da versus
it's a proven fact.
Yes.
Yeah, you're in a movie. Why are you crying? It's it's the music. It's not necessarily what's going on the screen. It's the music that triggers the emotion.
So when you look at Menkaure Pyramid, when you look at Menkaure Pyramid from one direction, one way to perceive it is 5/4, and the other way to perceive it is 8/5. And if you're perceiving it as 8/5, it's going to be heartbreaking for you to look at that structure. And if you're perceiving it as 5/4, it's going to be romantic love. So in the seed, right, or in the experience of romantic love is embedded already in an inverse equation, the seed of heartbreak.
Now, in the time that we have left, Robert, and we need to stay focused right here. So at looking at this and when talking about tone and its effect on everything, nature, emotions, water, our soul, everything else, how does 440 versus 432 change things?
Yeah, 440, I mean, look, okay, let me put it to you this way. There's how do I turn on and make sure that I've got sound? Because I want to show you something that I think is so fundamental.
You would have to send me the video, and then I would have to play it off of my computer. Or you might be able to.
There's no way to optimize sound.
See where it says video file? If it's a video file, click on that, and then you can load the video file in here.
What about like YouTube?
No, won't do it. It's got to be played off the computer. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just try to do it anyway, and you'll be able to listen to it anyhow. So through my microphone, at least. Not going to be the best, but it's better than nothing, because this is such an important principle for you to understand that I'm going to take you through it just really quick. And I made this film with a guy named Eric Rankin. You might know him.
I know Eric. Sure.
Yeah. So many years ago, we made this film called Sonic Geometry 2. I was the executive producer for it. And
he's the Reiki guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know Eric. Yeah.
So Sonic Geometry. Let me go ahead and stop share. Okay. So I'll share now again. Okay. Share screen. There we go. To share audio, share a tab instead. Huh.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Mean? How do you share a tab? Okay.
Yeah. Instead of window, click on tab.
Okay.
That ever known.
Okay. So let me try this. So instead of window, click on tab. Okay. So here's the tab. All right. So we'll try this. Can you hear this?
Their concept of cyclical time led to many incredible discoveries.
Do you hear that?
Let it go.
Okay, good. So I'm going to show you something that shows the relationship between geometry and music, because music is really just the form of geometry that we experience with our ears, and geometry is the music we experience with our eyes. It's all geometric. So here we go.
Keystone for instrument tuning, and more importantly, why? Here's where a deeper mystery begins to emerge, and to explore it, we will need to go back to Pythagoras' other passion, geometry. It is not an exaggeration to say that to Pythagoras and his disciples, geometry and math held a key to the nature of all life everywhere, and maybe it does. Let's look at the first four geometric shapes: the circle, triangle, square, and pentagon. In each of them are angles of degrees that, when added together, always total a specific number relative to that particular shape. For instance, if we take a triangle, the sum total of all three interior angles is always 180. For both the square and circle, it is 360. For a pentagon, it is 540. Now, at this moment, let's step back and look at these numbers in a different way, as there seems to be something about them that reaches beyond a simple sum of angles. Did you notice that they happen to be in the same numerical neighborhood as tone 432? What's more, they all add up to 9, just like 432. As an experiment, let's take a look at the numbers found in basic geometric shapes, then apply those numbers as vibration cycles to hear the tones they produce. First, let's listen to what the 180 total degrees contained in a triangle sound like. And here's a squares and circles 360 in cycles per second. A perfect octave up from the triangle. What about the pentagon at 540? That sounds like a harmonic fifth of the other two. That's interesting. What are these tones? They are F sharp and its perfect harmonic fifth of C sharp. Let's keep going. What does a hexagon 720 sound like? Another F sharp. Here's a seven-sided septagon, which totals 900. This is an A sharp, which happens to be the note required to complete an F sharp major chord in perfect three-part harmony. And finally, the octagon, where we get 1080, another C sharp. Suddenly, geometry is expressed by tones, and these tones just happen to create the most beautiful form of music, a perfect three-part major chord in the key of F sharp.
Man, I love F sharp.
Now notice that they all add to 9.
Yes.
There's a direct translation between hertz, right? And that hertz frequency is directly associated with the sum of angles of polygons and polyhedra. So it also works for all three-dimensional and four-dimensional objects too. They just become higher and higher frequencies. So therefore, every geometric form will always have a sum of angles that sums to 9, without exception. 440 hertz does not sum to 9. It's an incomplete geometry.
When what's cymatics, right? And when you see cymatics in action, it is visually, we'll come back to this. It's visually a way for everybody to it's a way for people to see what we're talking about, the way 440 reacts in cymatics versus 432. 432 is a well-oiled machine. Right? Smooth. 440 is like, and I never would have thought this before, but it's like, right? It's pissed off.
Yeah.
It's angry.
Yeah.
And you would never, you would never, and when you go to Robert and I were talking about this earlier. About a third of my guitars are tuned to 432, and I do it because I just enjoy it. It feels better. It's more natural. Strings vibrate a little bit differently, and there's a thing that happens with the wood, and I don't think that and the metal, and the magnetics and there's a basic law of physics here, which is a coil over a magnet creates an electric current. That's what happens with an electric guitar, right? You have the strings and the pickups are the coils, and at 432, everything just gels differently. It's the wood, it's your body, it's your ears. It's crazy. And I would have never known it if I wasn't introduced to it, because I was stuck in that 440 world. If I grab a guitar tuner, which I have many lying around here in the studio, they're all 440. Right. That's it. It's a 440 world, and to tune to 432 is a whole nother thing. But I would have never known it until I tried it and heard it and experienced it. It's incredible.
So if you share the screen for just a second, you'll see something. Of course, the tetractys is built right into 432. That is the tetractys progression, 4321, right? It is. So not only does Metatron's cube embed within it the three proportions of the three pyramids when looking at the pyramids from the ground level, but when we look at it from an aerial view as well in another dimension, the intersecting lines of Metatron's cube inform all the positions of the three pyramids also. It is a blueprint, both in the dimension of standing on the ground, looking at the pyramids and having the exact proportion of the pyramids without having to measure anything.
Right.
And then secondly, looking at it from an aerial view or from outer space. It's right there. So we discovered all of this, and I think it's very fundamental, and no one can really dispute the mathematics of it. That's the beauty of it. It is what it is. Here's the importance of the tetractys, the 432. Now, 432 shows up everywhere, and the proportions, and this is something that's true all over the world. If you look at the height of the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, Teotihuacan, Mexico, outside of Mexico City, the height is 216 feet. That matches perfectly the height of Menkaure Pyramid, the smallest pyramid in Giza. The base width of that same pyramid is 756 feet in Mexico. The base width of the Great Pyramid is identical to that, 756 feet. The Pyramid of the Moon has a base width of 481 feet, which happens to inform exactly the height of the Great Pyramid in Giza Plateau. The pyramids in Mexico are matching the same harmonic relationships, just slightly adjusted, but in the same scale. So I actually went to Mexico, measured all the slope angles of all the pyramids, and found that they were just informing other notes in the same scale of 24 notes. And this is true at Chichen Itza, Koba. It's true at all the pyramids, Ekbalam, everywhere.
I'm looking at it here on the screen. You know, I'm taking my notes, by the way, if everybody can see this. And so when you go 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1 pi, you have 432 and 432 in both columns repeating, and then to have it turn around and repeat that's for the geometry of the proportions to get your angles right and the building of the pyramids, but then to have that as a direct relation to the chromatic scale is like, and the 8 notes of the scale, it's insane to me. It's insane. Is it just because math works out that way, and the ratio, the 5, 4, 4, 3, and 3, 2 are just because that's the way music works too, as well, with frequency? Right?
I mean, look, if we change the slope angle of Menkaure Pyramid with Khafre Pyramid, then the whole thing wouldn't work.
Right.
So again, that demonstrates the intentionality.
Right.
Because it would no longer be in order. You've got the center of a scale, that the logarithmic center is the square root of 2, and then that gives you also the relationship of 2/1 as well as 1/1, as well as, you know, the 2/1 pi relationship. It's just another way of looking at 1, right? So this relationship then is flanked by the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, and then those are flanked by the major third and the minor sixth. And they always have to add up to 9. A third has to add to 6 to become a 9, right? A fifth has to add to a fourth to become a 9. And then once you go beyond the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, then you're flipping polarities as well. That's why you got major and minor, chords. Minor could be a negative polarity or a positive polarity. It doesn't really matter. It's just an opposite pole.
Right.
And
right,
what we
right.
find on the outside of the pyramid in the basin, this is the only place where everybody recognizes that there was some message left behind. In the original entrance, very few people get to go up there, but we went up there and we found this in the basin. These are raised letters or potentially numbers that have a V shape, a minus sign, what looks like a circle with a horizontal line through it, 3 lines, right, for the number 3, and then 2 right here. This is, I believe, similar to the way the Romans did it. So we've got horizontal lines are representing odd numbers, and vertical lines in the circle here are representing the polarity of positive numbers.
Where'd
So
you
you've got
find
5.
this? Where is this?
It's in the basin at the original entrance of the Great Pyramid, which is under the chevrons. Immediately at the basin under the chevrons.
Right.
Right. And
Wow.
the chevrons
I've never
mean
seen this.
Bull Mountain.
I've
Yeah,
never
this was
seen
discovered by Robert Schoch in like 1990s.
Okay.
But they didn't know that it was potentially numbers. So the letter V is a way we have depicted the number 5 well before Roman times. So V minus 1 equals 4.
right.
Then you've got 3. These are the 3. And this is exactly matching the Chinese character of the number 3, which is san in Japanese. Ichi, ni, san, shi. That's san, which is 3. And it's matching also the representation. The most iconic 3 stars we see in the sky are Orion's belt. That's why the name Samsung Electronics is a reference to Orion, Orion's belt. 3 stars.
I've heard that. Yes.
And then the 2 lines here, you've got a positive polarity switch because it's even. So
Yeah, that's
5
crazy.
minus, here's the minus sign, minus
Oh,
1,
I
4,
see it.
3, 2.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Okay. Here's the fundamental question. Did the ancient Egyptians tune their lira F sharp to 432?
I believe so, yes, without a doubt. And the reason I know this is because that's exactly what Pythagoras brought back with him.
Mm-hmm.
He used 432 hertz tuning.
So the pharaoh, right, sitting in the throne, being entertained, right? Right? The musicians, This has to be in 432. You know what I mean?
I think they understood.
They understood that, right?
Pythagoras understood that 27 hertz was the lowest note that we could hear audibly. And you keep doubling that to take representing higher octaves. So 27 becomes 54, 54 becomes 108, 108 becomes 216, and 216 becomes 432. And the sun's diameter is 864,000 miles. We have 86,400 seconds in a day. Half of that is 43,200. You're looking at orders of magnitude of scaling that relate to one geometric form, which is strangely a circle with 1 meter as its radius will have a 1/12 of its circumference will be the Royal Egyptian cubit of 1.718 feet. And it will take exactly a pendulum that is 1 meter long, 1 second to swing and traverse that 1.718 feet, which is the Euler number minus 1. So now you've got a whole new way to look at, wait, when was the meter created? The meter was created in 1799.
Baffles
But
me.
how is it possible that the height going into the entranceway inside the Great Pyramid through the antechambers is 1 meter high exactly? What's that about? How did they know this?
Baffles me.
If you put a sphere inside the apex, if the pyramid had its full apex, the sphere that would fit in the top of it has a radius of 1 meter. And wait, the perimeter of the king's chamber is exactly pi times 10 meters. Exactly. It's 31.4159262.535 meters. Exactly. So it's as if they used the inch, which historically was actually an oncha, which is an oculus. It's an eyeball. If I took your eyeball out, it would be 1 inch in diameter. So this whole idea that we have of the foot, meter, and cubit, never the twain shall meet. No, they're just different ways of representing the difference between transverse and scalar waves, music, light, sound.
And I have I think that's a point for me that was answered with all of this, is that when you are standing, not on the outside, when you are standing in the king's chamber, you can see that there has been zero movement. No chance is added to any of this. The construction is intentional, it's perfect, it's precise, and it's not shifted at all. You can see it everywhere, every seam and everything. So to suggest that movement over time or earthquakes or natural things have adjusted this so it fits modern numbers doesn't play out. That doesn't come into the argument. The king's chamber is as it was built originally.
Yep. So if you share screen, I'll show you a little bit inside the king's chamber. So there are etchings all over the walls that we have discovered, and you can find them. There's an eye right on the wall in the center, an eye of Ra. You can see the line going all the way across here. This is the Alpha Omega on the sarcophagus.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yep,
on the back side of the rim, right? Probably you asked Muhammad or somebody said, hey, show us the Alpha Omega. And Muhammad probably showed you. And he was with me the night I discovered it. And he was like, I can't even believe this. He's like, did you make this? I'm like, yeah, no, I just chipped it out just now.
Yeah, just carved it.
Yeah, this is rose granite. It's made of 70% plus quartz crystal. It's so brittle. You try to crack that thing, it's going to shatter. So, but you can't see the Alpha Omega with light on it directly. You have to put the light on the side, just as I'm doing right here. And otherwise, you'll never see it. And then there's a compass as well along the rim that's right next to it, which you'll see in just a moment. So there's the Alpha Omega. You can see the Omega right here. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is a brass rubbing type that I did. And look at this.
So there's a circle around it.
Do you see this circle and compass right here?
Right here, there's the compass, and there's 5-degree markings on this as well. The cow. Here's the bull.
Now, this is a bull that we discovered on the north wall that now everyone has started to recognize. And this north wall discovery includes as well 2 diamonds that are interlocking right here. You can see one right here.
Oh,
there should be no straight lines, right?
Right.
There should be no straight lines. And then there's an inverted one right here.
Right.
And Dolores Cannon said through her QHHC sessions that there were hidden things in the walls of the pyramid that no one would see until the right person came in that matched the symbol on the wall that was in the hidden part. This is a bull right here. So there's the face. This is his snout. Here's an eye. Here's his 2 horns. You'll see it better in a moment.
Along here in the cow.
Yeah, that's really cool. No,
and this
I've
is
never,
matching the Orion constellation.
I've not seen this.
Yep.
I intentionally just scoured the walls in there looking for something. No, I've never seen this. Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy.
So look,
that's on the north.
Showing us, oh, Ryan, that's the north wall, which is where Taurus is. So this is what it looks like from the side. It's etched into the wall. It's in the molecular structure. And there's a larger cow outside of the bull. And the bull represents the letter Alpha, because that is the symbol for the Apis bull. And the symbol for the Hathor is Omega, because her hair is shaped like the Omega. These are old symbols that are Arcturian symbols. The side of the Arcturian mother ship, the Athena, has an Alpha Chi Omega on it. It's been widely reported as such. So look at that.
Wow.
You can
Yeah,
see the
there
bull.
it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Normally, I would say, Rob, or to anybody you're reaching, but no, you're not here. You're not. It's right. It's right there, and having the apex. There's the chevron. Everybody,
Yep,
that's
and
the
that
main
writing
entrance.
is right
Yeah.
here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's where it is. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So there's the Apis bull. Here's the Hathor. So there's an eye right here, and then there's horns. I mean, not even the Egyptians dispute this now.
We can see the shape.
Now look at this. There's freaking DNA on the wall above the bull and the cow. Look, just follow my cursor. Goes like this, and it's in three dimensions. You see it? It goes like this, and down like this, and then back. And you can see even the nucleotide pairs going the opposite direction. See this line right here? Another line right here. Another line. Come on, there's DNA on the wall.
That's a double helix. Yes.
That's right.
Actually showing up right here. Here is the double helix coming down like this.
Wow.
And the other double helix coming this, and they are attached by nucleotide pairs.
And it's in perspective geometry drawing, like it's three-dimensional.
Of double-strand DNA.
So it is not just this. You can see here, look at this. This is in the Queen's chamber.
Covered by plaster. Because it probably was.
There's a man's profile.
Nose. Here's a mouth. Lips. Very well-formed lips and teeth. And a chin. It goes like this. And the man comes all the way down to the floor. And it's like a bald man, and here's his ear. Here's the nose, and the nostril you can see very clear. And teeth. Can you see that?
Even vertebrae in his back. The walls are literally covered in petroglyphs, some of which have been scrubbed off. There's a molar for his teeth.
There's a white bird right here. A white bird with a plume of feathers behind its head. Here's its back of its neck. And then it has a wing that comes across here all the way down. The first thing
that's pretty cool. That's pretty. Do you?
Those were constellations. Those were constellations. That's Lyra and Cygnus.
Can you pause it right here? By the way, we're off of the network. We're just in overtime right now, but so for everybody out there that was cut off, that is over here now on YouTube. Okay, so and look, is it possible that these walls were finished at one point, and then these were part of the art that was on the wall, and then the finish has come off over the years, and whatever it is, plaster,
I think what happened was, I think it got scrubbed off. I think a lot of it's been damaged, but it's still in the molecular structure. We can still see all of it.
Right.
And now even the Scan Pyramids project team is looking into this because they don't want to damage them because they know that they exist. So I presented this to the Egyptian government in December, and I can tell you they were freaked out.
Well, see, the problem that I or anybody else has that goes inside of the Queen's Chamber or any of the chambers in the Great Pyramid, it's dark. It's dark, and you're not allowed to go in there with, giant flashlights and floodlights and things and like, you can't do that. I'm trying to think right now. Correct me, Robert. I think there's only like two small lights in the King's Chamber, right? There's that one in the corner, and then by where that little air conditioner fan thing is, right?
Yep.
And then there's one in the other, but it's dark in there. It's
very dark.
Yeah, it's a dark room.
Yeah.
The same thing with the Queen's.
You know what I did? What we did then is we took all the LiDAR scans of all the walls and made our own simulation version that's hyper realistic. So we could see everything on the walls. I can go in there tonight from my living room and I could go through the entire pyramid. I've got the entire thing reconstructed on Apple Vision Pro.
Nice.
And the lighting is excellent. So Harvard University was able to do those LiDAR scans, and they were able to get in to see all that. So the point is that all of this is showing us the musical relationships, the 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, 2/1 pi, and then 2/1 and 1/1. And it's not just these pyramids. It's also the pyramids in Mexico. It's the pyramids everywhere. And then Menkaure, I mean, even the Djoser pyramid fits inside this grid. All of them, all the missing pyramids, right, can now be identified because they're all just different musical notes.
All right, let me ask you one last question before we say goodnight. By the way, a perfect conversation, Robert. Perfect. What do you make of the artist that when they first visited Egypt, both French and British, were drawing 4 pyramids on the Giza Plateau?
Yeah, I think that there was a 4th pyramid. I think that there's a 4th star as well that can be referenced, and we should be able to find it. And that's one of the things I'm working on right now, is to locate the 4th pyramid. It's probably semi-destroyed or mainly destroyed. You know, there's probably not much left to it, but it was probably I believe it was there.
Yeah. Those artists don't make those kinds of mistakes. It's either 3 or 4, right?
Well, actually, I could show you that the Fra Mauro map shows there were 5.
Okay.
From 1557, the Fra Mauro map shows that there were 5 pyramids and not 3.
And then the other drawing, I'm trying to think of the river. It's not the Nile, it's another river, but there were 2 pyramids in that river. And you look at, and you look at that artist is not making, and there's a description that the artist gave of what the pyramids look like with the statues.
Yeah, and they showed like an altar at the top of the pyramid.
Of both of them.
And both of them, and this was at the time of Herodotus.
Yes, and they're not there. It's like, who's making this kind of mistake? I don't think you're making these mistakes. There's not that kind of artistic license going on. So, Robert, thank you so much, my friend. Just keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward not only to our next conversation, but your future work. And where can everybody reach out to you and follow what you're doing?
RobertEdwardGrant.com. Also on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel as well under the same name. And I've written several books, and you can check out my TV show on Gaia, which is called Code X, and season 2 is coming out soon.
And I'll let everybody know that Robert and I are going to start the Grant Church Trio. He's going to play trumpet, and our CD will be coming out soon. We're going to do Carpenter's covers. What do you say?
Yeah, why not?
I'll talk to you, Robert. Enjoy the rest of your evening, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right, good seeing you. Bye-bye.
Perfect night. Good seeing you. Thank you so much. Perfect night on the show. And again, RobertEdwardGrant.com. The links are below in the description, over on our website, and throughout social media. And with that, what have I got going on tomorrow night? Let me see here. Hold on. I'll tell you right now. Tomorrow night. Oh yeah. Andy Marciello is with us. It's all UFOs tomorrow night. Well, UFOs, USOs, and UAPs. And we're going to be talking about his 15 years of research. So until tomorrow night, I just want to say, go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.